Hello there. Well, I am talking to you today from the basement. If it looks a little dark, I've got artificial lights on me. And if you're listening to this via a podcast, well, you won't know, but I am being lit up by the artificial lights because I'm in a basement in my friend's home in Breckenridge, Colorado. And I'm curious to know if you're joining me live for the live stream, whereabouts are you right now? In the US or in Europe? I think it's pretty wee hours of the morning for people in the southern hemisphere. But I'd love to hear where you are right now as I'm sharing some thoughts with you from chapter 5 of my book, Stop Playing Safe. Now, as you know, I've been going through every week, sharing with you insights from each of the chapters. And this week, I'm talking to you about how important it is to continually challenge your own best thinking. So chapter 5 is titled Learn, Unlearn, and Relearn. The futurist Alvin Toffler once said that those who will be most successful in the future are not the most intelligent. They are not the most learned, i.e. they don't necessarily have an MBA from an Ivy League. They are those who have learned how to learn, how to unlearn, and how to relearn. So we human beings get pretty attached to our own perspectives. We like to think that our way of viewing the world, our mental maps and our paradigms, our rules, our assumptions, that's how it is. And I'm sure you've heard of confirmation bias. There is a natural tendency that we all have to look for evidence that supports our way of seeing things and to either discount, to refute, or to just ignore evidence that might contradict it. And I just want to say hello to Lauren McQuaid joining me from Scotland. Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. I'm glad you're here. So as you think about where you are right now and you think about your future, I encourage you to actively step back and challenge some of the assumptions you have about how the world works, what it takes for you to achieve whatever it is you want in your work, in your career, in your business. If you're in a leadership role and you're help setting the direction, where do you need to step back and challenge some of your own best thinking? A guy called Daryl Zanuck, he was the head of 20th Century Fox. And back in 1946, when the television was first introduced in the United States, he said, people will soon get tired of staring at a plywood box in the corner of their living room every night. Now, you assume as the head of 20th Century Fox, he was a pretty bright guy, but he had a mental paradigm that people aren't going to want to sit at home and look at a box in the corner of their living room. You know, you can laugh at it now, but 60 years later, Steve Ballmer, when he was the CEO of Microsoft, and he was asked, what do you think of this new iPhone thing that Steve Jobs has introduced? And he said, I don't think this iPhone is going to last. What did he say? Specifically, he said, no one's going to want to have something like the iPhone. I give it 6 months. Now, it's easy to look at those kind of comments now and say, hey, isn't that stupid? Isn't that silly? Aren't they being short-sighted? But 10 years from now, it's almost guaranteed that you and me, we're going to look back on where we are now and we're going to see opportunities that we missed, that we had blinkers on. We're going to have made some decisions that if we had the benefit of hindsight, we wouldn't have made. Marshall Goldsmith wrote a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And, you know, it's a very universal principle. The thinking that got us to where we are today is going to be insufficient to get us to whether individually or collectively, humanity, or in an organization at different levels, to get us to where we want to go in the future. And of course, it's hard to go, well, what is it I'm missing? I mean, you don't know what you don't know, but you can be more deliberate and more proactive and even braver in really challenging the assumptions that you bring. There's a saying that assumptions kill possibilities. And so it really serves us often to stick a question mark on those things that we hold to be certainties. You know, we need to embrace uncertainty as the new norm. I mean, the life has always been uncertain, but we also need to embrace learning, not as this one-off discrete event that every now and again you go to a class, you do an online course and you learn something. But it's just an ongoing journey to be continually challenging your own best thinking, challenging your own assumptions, and upgrading your mental maps of the world, of the workplace, of your market, of how your customers buy, of how you execute on strategy, on how you sell, on everything that you do, on how you engage with other people. My kids, I remember over the years, they've laughed. They're like, Mum, how did you and Dad even meet before the age of like Insta messaging or text messaging? Didn't even have cell phones. Like, how did anyone ever plan a party when you couldn't even email people? And of course, you know, we did manage to get by just fine, despite the fact there was no such thing as swipe left, swipe right, cell phones or anything else. I'm sure if you're over the age of 40, you maybe 40, 50, I'm not sure. I'm sure you remember all very well that the age as it was before we had all of the opportunities of modern technology. But the reality is that technology is evolving at such a fast pace that if we're thinking about what we can do through what's available to us now and our current technologies, we're going to be missing out. And so wherever you are right now in your career, in your life in general, I invite you to try a few of these techniques and strategies that I wrote about in You've Got This. Oh, sorry, not in You've Got This. That's in Stop Playing Safe. You've Got This was my previous book. Stop Playing Safe. So, for instance, where do you need to practice vu déjà? Now, I know you've heard of my brain's getting wide. Deja vu. You've heard of deja vu. Vu déjà is taking that and twisting it and looking at where you are now as though you have never seen it before. Instead of going, oh yeah, I think I've been here before. If you had never been in your circumstance before, if you were an alien landing in from outer space and you were looking at your current situation and you'd never seen it, where might you be stepping back and going, why am I doing it this way? I mean, why do we go through these steps or in this sequence? Why have we got the processes or the system set up as I do? Why do I do it the way I'm doing it? We know that when people come into new teams that come from other industries, or maybe they're 20 years younger and they don't have all of that fixed assumptions and fixed mindset on how things work, they can be incredibly valuable in challenging those paradigms that we have. And it's why diversity is so important. Not just, we have lots of types of diversity, but neurodiversity, different people who think differently, personality diversity, generational diversity. Obviously, I talk a lot about gender diversity in my work with women in leadership, but really stepping back and looking at it through fresh eyes. Secondly, finding people who see things very differently to you and asking them to challenge your thinking. If you've got a problem, if it keeps coming up again and again and again, go out and talk to people that you know you don't see eye to eye with, who maybe have very different experience than you, and ask them to challenge your thinking. Thirdly, try on a new story. I've talked a lot about the importance of challenging our stories. We create our stories, then our stories create us. And you might have a problem right now, and you've got a story about that problem, about why it exists, and about what you can or can't do to solve it. Well, what's another story you could tell yourself? Think of the smartest, wisest person you know. Think of someone who is very different in their approach than you. If you're very left brain analytical, find someone who's uber creative and intuitive. If you're someone who's a creative, big picture thinker, find someone who loves the details. And think, well, what's the story they would have about this? And try on. If I was looking at this and I was telling myself a story that this problem is a great opportunity. If actually this thing that I'm thinking isn't working is actually perhaps working, but differently than how I'm describing it, how does that shift how you see it? Albert Einstein once said, "We cannot solve our problems at the same level of thinking at which they were created." You cannot solve your biggest problems, nor can you seize the biggest opportunities that are going to be born from this time of disruption if you're operating from the same mindset at which they were created. And pressing Google Earth and zooming up and looking at it from an enlarged perspective, practicing that vu deja, getting other people to challenge your best thinking, continually challenging your own story and asking yourself how someone else might see that. All of those things can help you to step back, loosen your attachment to what you think, the way you think things are, loosen your attachment to your certainties. The German psychologist Erich Fromm once said that we have to have the courage to let go of our certainties if we want to find the most creative, innovative ways of solving the greatest challenges of our time. And so for you, I know it's sometimes difficult because we all like to think that the way we see things is the way they are. But what if you've got it wrong? What if it's a whole 180 degrees wrong from how you see things? And, given that we live in this period where we're going through still figuring out how to get out of this pandemic, and we live often in echo chambers. Often we are getting our media, our information from the same sources all the time. I encourage you to go out and really sit and listen to sources of information that are different from the ones that are your traditional go-to, because a lot of people get very stuck in fixed assumptions and paradigms about how things work. That's why we're seeing so much polarization in our politics. And the reality is that the best solutions don't come from the far left or the far right. They come from listening to all of the different opinions, amalgamating those, and then going, you know what makes the most sense? And so for you, none of us are immune to getting caught into confirmation bias. None of us are immune to what we call the cognitive perceptual defense mechanism, where we sort of push off things that don't line up with our way of viewing things. All of us have to actively challenge our own best thinking, to learn, to unlearn, and to relearn. And so I hope that this has been helpful to you. And I just want you to know that there is always a solution to the challenges we're dealing with. We often just have to keep zooming up, looking at it through a larger perspective, not only at this point in time, but over a longer period of time. And recognizing that if everybody's thinking alike, then somebody's not thinking, and that the best solutions will always come from embracing a diversity of perspectives with an open mind. Thanks so much. I look forward to sharing with you chapter 6 from Stop Playing Safe on my next live stream. Take care.